Today is NBA Appreciation Day. Something I'm going to do. I'm going to take one player and just show appreciation to that player and pretty much just marvel at the skill and just the way the person play. And for me, the first person that I want to talk about is James Harden. I mean, because I have to be honest with you. I watched James Harden since college, and I love this game. You know, he was a smooth guard that can score, run the floor. He can pass. So he was pretty much able to do. He was able to do anything on the court. You know, cross you over, get to the lane, or cross you over, see that person is open, pass. Pass off to that person and get that assist. And then he got drafted to OKC, coming off the bench. You know, he's surrounded by James Harden, Westbrook, Cephalosius, Serge Ibaka. So many players that I really don't understand why they never got a title. But that's for another day for me to sit and talk about. And so James Harden, when he was traded to Houston, I didn't know what to expect. You know, I was just like, you coming off the bench, you really didn't see. I was not expecting the person that Houston got just to blow up. I mean, it was just crazy. And with that, his points just shot up, and his game also annoyed me because it was dribble, dribble, dribble. Step back, shoot a three, get to the lane. It was annoying because I wasn't watching him every day. I was seeing highlights or certain games. And then just seeing how in the playoffs he just flames out. And then when looking at it in retrospect, it makes sense though. When you're the sole scoring option, that happens. I mean, it was so bad in terms of fouls. I'll never forget LeBron James just had his hands behind his back. And just to see if the refs will call a foul, and the ref will call a foul. And and people like to sit and blame James Harden and say that he was foul hunting. No, he was taking advantage of the rules that presented itself at that time. That's why I laugh at people when they sit there and say James Harden was foul hunting. Was it annoying? Yes. Did it drive me crazy? Yes. With that said, though, he just did what he had to do, and he took advantage of what the rules were at the time, just like players take advantage of the rules are at this time. So his time in Houston, I mean, he was scoring 30. I mean, he was just one of the top scoring guards, just prolific. And so when he went to Brooklyn, I didn't know what to think. I mean, because they had Kyrie, KD, James Harden. Yeah, like everybody else, I was just sitting there like, oh, well, it's going to be a title. Even though I'm not crazy the way how Kevin Durant did it, because that's a total different story that I'll talk about Kevin Durant. But when he went there, the drama and the lack of times that they played with each other with injuries, and then Kyrie deciding that he didn't want to play because he didn't want to take a shot, and something I'll talk about at a later time. Then he escaped New Jersey. I mean, he escaped Brooklyn and came to Philly. And it's funny now in retrospect with people sitting there when that trade happened, when they sat there and said that Brooklyn got the better of the trade, even though Philly fans were sitting there telling people, no, Ben is not who y'all think he is. And for the reason of history and why people talk about Philly fans, y'all boo Santa Claus, even though that was in the 60s. Santa Claus was drunk. I'm not condoning it, but hey, that's the 60s. Okay, they threw snowballs at the Cowboys in the 90s. Who wouldn't throw snowballs at the Cowboys with Jimmy Johnson? And Jimmy Johnson had a snowball throwing face. I mean, come on. Who wouldn't have done it at that time? So it was just funny just watching the news. Well, watching ESPN, Fox, and sit there and say, oh, Brooklyn got the best of the trade and this and that. And when James Harden when he came to Philly, I learned something that day, and I've been learning it since he's been here. What happens when you have a real point guard running a team? For the simple fact that you get to see how hampered Joel Embiid was playing with Ben Simmons, and you got to see how the team was hampered and hurt playing with Ben Simmons. When James Harden and Joel Embiid start doing that pick and roll, you started to see what happens when you have a person who has the ball and is a threat to shoot and is a threat to score. How that opened the game up for Joel Embiid and made it easier, and how it opened it up for everybody else. Because see, everybody want to sit there and talk about Ben Simmons. They're like, well, he was he was getting people open for the most 3-pointers. Dog, that was on a break. I've watched enough Sixers games with Ben Simmons where I saw time after time where the announcers sit there and say he needs to be more aggressive. He needs to be more aggressive. If you're doing a pick and roll with Ben Simmons, they're not following Ben Simmons. They're following Joel Embiid. So then on offense, it's 4 against 5. And then you put him in a dunker spot. Then he's just sitting there now. He's clogging up the middle. And then you just sit there and put a person who can't play defense on him because he's not going to shoot and he's not going to be a threat. So the time that James Harden has been here, seeing how important a point guard is, it's not a coincidence that once Ben Simmons left, that Joe is averaging over 30 points a game. It is not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence that his percentage is going up. His points is going up. The game his shots has gotten easier. Where they're doing a pick and roll and he's rolling to the court, dunk. Or it's a pick and pop and he's at the free throw. He's turned that shot. That shot has become automatic. His mid-range game is vicious and is dangerous. And you couldn't do that with Ben Simmons here. Why? Because his refusal to shoot made the court small. So looking back on all that, it really makes me appreciate James Harden. And you know what? For his good, it is amazing that a person can average 20 and 10 and people sit there and say that's a down year. You know how many players in the NBA will wish they had a 20 and 10 season? It just shows how great James Harden was. Now, there are going to be some times in his playoffs where James Harden's going to have to probably bring out Houston James Harden. He's probably going to have to score a 30 or a 40 game. There may be 1 or 2 games that he will have to do that. I'm just sitting there saying that he probably won't have to do it a lot. You have Joel Embiid, and you get Maxey going. I hope they get Tobias going. He'll be able to save his legs and be able to sit there and keep the ship going. And then if he has to pull out a vintage James Harden, I hope he have a few in his bag to be able to do it. I'm just here trying to appreciate the guy and pretty much sit there and say, I'm glad he's here. The Sixers look like a different team with James Harden as the point guard than they do with Ben Simmons. And it feels good to live in Philly And to be a Sixers fan, to feel vindicated when you sit and see the travesty and the drama that has happened in Brooklyn. Because again, I got to see what a team looks like when you don't have a real point guard, but I get to see it from the vantage point of Brooklyn. Whereas I get to see what a team looks like with a point guard here in Philly. James Harden is old. He's not as fast as he used to be. He doesn't have the ups that he used to be. He is crafty. He is shifty. I think this playoffs is going to be interesting, and this playoffs is going to pretty much show what he's made of, and it's going to show what the Sixers are made of, and Joel Embiid. Thanks for listening. And I'm just sitting here and say, if you like what I'm saying, please come back. Click that subscribe button. Hit that bell to get notifications. And yeah, like I said, let's keep this going. Let's grow this. And yeah, I want to see where it goes. And eventually I will like the live stream. But right now, I just want to do this and I want to see where the interest grows.